Hi guys, welcome back to Alfatron Electronics. Today we'll take a look at the Alfatron VM52 Vision Mixer. We will do a multi-part series on the unit and we'll explain all the different areas of operation and features and functions that the unit has. But in this episode we will basically take a look at the layout of the controller and all the buttons and connections on the unit. Stay tuned. So we'll take it from the one side of the controller to the other side. I'll start off on the top left and just talk you through all the different buttons and knobs that the unit has. And we'll go in each part to a little bit more details of all the controls and how to actually use them and operate the unit, set it up and switch between video sources, etc. So starting from the top left and on the far left hand side, you'll see a few rotary encoders on the side here. These are all parts of the camera control of the unit. The first one is your white balance control. It also has a white balance switch, so you can switch between the different modes of white balance on your camera, so auto white balance or getting to a specific color temperature or indoor or outdoor lighting and so on. So there's a couple of different white balance settings that it will switch to from that button. Similarly, if you look at the exposure button, which is next, that's your exposure control, as well as your different modes of exposure, so auto exposure, iris or shutter exposure, or full manual, which you'll then adjust all the parameters manually. The next one down is our focus control. So again, that's our knob to control our focus. And then we have an autofocus on or autofocus off button. Further down, then we have the zoom function. So that then is our tele zoom for getting close up into a shot, or wide to actually just pull the lens back and give you a wider shot angle. So that's all the camera controls on the left side here. At the top, we have a couple of buttons: mute to mute your audio output of the device, FTB, which stands for fade to black, that then basically fades your output to black. Then we have a switch for, it says MV, that is multi-view. If it's lit and highlighted like this, then it basically shows me my multi-view on my preview screen on the unit. If I press it, it'll basically switch to a program view or a preview, depending on what you've set to that output. And again, that we'll look at a later stage. So I'll put it back to multi-view for now. The first block on the top there, that is our media section. So we can activate or deactivate our streams. We can start or stop recording. We can press the audio button and you'll see it'll open up our audio mixer on the right hand side here, that we can then with the joystick and the menu knob control the audio mixer. Or then we can press the play button and you'll see I have a video already loaded here in the auxiliary feed, which we'll talk about as well. If I press play, you'll see that it will basically start playback on that video and it'll basically just loop that video over and over and over again. And that's just a quick way to access and play a single video that's on the unit. The next set of buttons, that is our overlays and our keying functions. So firstly, we have two logo overlays. I can have a logo 1, you'll see it turn on the black Alfatron logo on the top. Or if I go to logo 2, that'll turn on the white logo in the same position. And those positions you can adjust and move, and you can adjust the size of the units or of the logo as well. Then we have two picture-in-picture functions, and that can be side by side or one large, one small picture in picture. There's a couple of different settings there, and you can basically adjust or set, rather say it like that, set which is picture-in-picture 1. So if I press pip 1, I'll select which of my input feeds is pip 1 or picture-in-picture 1, and same with 2. And then you'll activate and deactivate them as you need. Then we have the downstream key function, and that is to basically key out a black background, for instance, and then just leave title slides over your image or your main output. So you can put up the title of a person or the title of a video or the title of a production of some sorts. Next to that is the chroma function, and that's for the green screen chroma keying. And again, all those detail settings we'll set up in the menu function, and we'll go through those separately. Then we have a look at the transitions, and this is all your mixed transitions or your fixed transitions when you adjust or change between different inputs. So firstly, we have some wipe effects. We also have mix effects. We can dip to a selected color, so dip to black or dip to blue or dip to orange. You can basically set that up. And then the time button here is how long the transition time is adjusted. And again, if I just adjust the transition time here, you'll see it adjusts in the window there. And if I press it again, it'll just deactivate the transition function or the transition effects speed. So coming down from that, I have my presets for my cameras. So I can recall 4 positions on my cameras directly. If I just demonstrate that very briefly, if I press on camera 3, which is this camera above that you're looking at, I can switch from that view to a more close-up view pretty quickly. And if I press position 3, it gives me a even more closer view of the screen, and I can switch back to position 1, and that will take it back to the overall view of the unit. So that's your camera presets. Continuing with the camera selections now, if we look at the main button or the main control buttons underneath the display, camera 1 through 4 is my 4 cameras that I can select on the unit. And we've pretty much set it up that camera 1 is my main camera that you're looking at me from the front. Camera 2 is my second shot camera, and then camera 3 is my overhead camera. And I can at any point select any of those cameras and make adjustments to them by just highlighting which camera is selected. In order to do that, once I select it, you'll see it brings up and highlights which functions are in auto or manual mode on my camera selection. Or I can then, with the joystick, adjust my position and also rotate for my zoom on the camera. Next one down is my program and my preview, and that is essentially my active sources is the program source. So whatever source is then going out on the main outputs of the unit, or to the USB output, or to a recording, or even to my live stream. Whatever is selected to be the program out, which sits on the right hand side of the multi-view, that is what goes out onto the stream or out on the master outputs. Then we also have the preview section. So that's my next camera in queue, the one that I've going to be switching to next. So in this case now, if I then just quickly look at my cuts and auto functions here, so that's my transition functions along with the slider on the right, that will be to adjust my transition as well. If I press cut, you'll see on the screen here, it'll basically just jump between the two. So it switches input 1 and 2, and you'll see them switch here as well. Or then if I press auto, that will be a smooth mixed transition, which I've got selected here based on the transition speed that I've set on the unit on my time setting. Alternatively, I can do that manually by adjusting the slider on the right hand side, and you'll see that it makes a very smooth long transition between the two. And again, at any point you can press cut and just get back to the previous shot. Further, just looking at the auxiliary and the pattern button here. Auxiliary is a 5th input, if you want to call it that, or a 5th source on the camera. So we have our 4 main sources that's tied to the 4 HDMI inputs on the back of the unit. And then we have the auxiliary source, which could be an NDI source. So I can bring in one NDI stream camera into the unit, or it could be a UVC input, which is the USB camera. So you can plug a USB web camera directly into the unit as well and call that webcam source up to the auxiliary. Or you can have the auxiliary assigned to the video like I have it now. As you'll see there, like I mentioned earlier, the video played back inside the auxiliary source. And again, if I then just select it, you'll see that the auxiliary goes to my preview. And if I switch it, the auxiliary will go to my master, or to my program out at least. And at any point, if the video is running, you will see that it will output the audio of that video out onto the audio section of the unit. And that video will just loop. So even if I transition it back out, so the video just continues looping and plays in the background. So it doesn't actually affect the play or the stop of the video if you switch to the transitions. All right, lastly then we have 2 buttons here that's for our menu control. So if I just press on the menu button, you'll see it brings up a menu on the right bottom side of the screen. And here I can adjust all my settings. And if I wanted to adjust anything, I select the setting I want, I press on the button to access it, and that will take me into the menu. And that's how you would navigate through the menu. And then lastly, if I want to just return back one step in the menu, press menu again. If I want to go all the way out, I'll just press menu until it gets me back to the main screen. Okay, so that's the overview of the top of the unit. If we just talk about the physical input connections on the unit, as I mentioned, there's 4 HDMI inputs on the device, as well as 4 SDI inputs. Now those are not 4+4, it's either or. So you'll switch either the SDI as the main unit, or the main input, or the HDMI. There's priorities that you can set up in the menu. So SDI can be priority 1 and HDMI can be priority 2, or the other way around. And that's independently set for each input. So let's say SDI is priority 1 and HDMI is priority 2. If the SDI feed is lost, it will switch over to the HDMI feed automatically. Okay. So that's our 4 physical inputs that the unit can maintain. On HDMI 1 and HDMI 2, it is also 4K 60 supported inputs. That will downscale those two 4K 60 inputs to a 1080p resolution for processing and output of the unit ultimately. So the unit is not 4K in full, but it does support 2 4K inputs on HDMI input 1 and HDMI input 2. SDI is also only 1080p, so it's 3G SDI inputs on the unit. Then further, we have 2 HDMI outputs, a program out and an auxiliary out, and we also have 1 additional SDI output, which you can assign any one of those 3 outputs to be either one of the feeds. So I could, for instance, keep my program output as program. I could set my auxiliary as preview, so I can then both see my auxiliary, my program and my preview screen on my outputs. And I can then, for instance, on the SDI, assign any of the individual inputs to the output, or I can assign the auxiliary or the pattern button directly as a feed into the SDI. And similarly, I can do that with the HDMI program or HDMI aux outputs as well. You can literally assign the multi-view, you can assign the preview, you can assign the program to any of the 3 outputs at your leisure as you would need them to be assigned. All right. Furthermore, we do have an audio input section. So there's 2 XLR audio inputs. There's also a mini jack input, which is channels 3 and 4. And you also have a audio output jack on the unit. So the unit supports those 4 analog audio channels plus 4 channels on the HDMI or the SDI inputs, as well as then an auxiliary audio feed that would play back the audio, for instance, from a video if you were doing that. Or if you had an NDI device or an NDI stream coming in on the auxiliary, you could also pick up that as an audio feed on the auxiliary feed. Furthermore, we also have the network connection on the unit, which is what I'm using to control all my cameras with. And to access the web GUI of the unit, you can do firmware updates through the web GUI, control the device through the web GUI, and do a few additional features, like, for instance, set up your Facebook and YouTube streams that you want to stream to, because if you hit stream, it needs to send somewhere. Those streams and that details, the login details and the stream keys, all that you would set up in the web GUI access through the network ports. There's also then a USB-A port on the back, and that is for a UVC camera, or in this case, I have my USB drive connected to the unit so that I can upload my Alfatron logos or my Alfatron video or any specific background patterns that I want to load on the unit to use. So that's a USB drive reader. There's also, you can also record to that USB drive. And then there's a USB-C port on the back as well. That is for streaming to a USB host device, so like a PC, that would pick up as a audio and video device on the PC, so you can actually stream or send the outputs of the unit directly to a PC as well. So the unit will come up as a webcam and an audio device on your PC. There's also an SD card reader, and the SD card reader you can also use to access information and load information on the unit or record into the SD card reader. So that's a basic overview of the VM52. Stay tuned. We will be looking at more detailed information on the unit and how to set up all the individual features in the next episode.